Hello everyone, welcome back to our Bachelor of Fine Art and Bachelor of Photography selection task section. Thanks for coming today. And for those of you who didn't make it to the earlier session, my name is Martine Carrant and I'm the Program Manager of the BA Fine Arts. And I'll be hosting you along with my colleague, Alan Hill, who will also talk to you about the selection tasks for fine art and photography. For this fine art session, I'll also be joined by our specialist academic teachers who'll be happy to answer your questions during and at the end of this presentation. So you can text in your questions and we can also answer them face to face at the end. So from ceramics, we've got Chris Code, from drawing, Greg Creek, gold and silversmithing, Mark Edgoose, painting, Peter Ellis, print, Richard Harding, and sculpture, Fleur Summers. And Alan will introduce his colleagues when it's his turn. Okay, now before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge, can we just go to the next? Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the unceded lands on which I live, work and create of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation. And I respectfully acknowledge ancestors and elders past, present and emerging, and any First Nations people who are with us here today. In the next slide, I'd just like to mention that in our school and in RMIT, the goal to achieve this transformation is by maturing our values, culture, policies and structures in a way that embeds reconciliation in everything we do. So this happens in our learning, in our making, the spaces that we work and the places that we visit and research. So in the next slide, let's begin by looking at some of the important dates to consider in the application timeline. And then Alan and I will take you through the folio submission, or what RMIT refers to as the selection task. So some of the main dates that are really important to know is that the VTAC timely application closes September the 30th. Now, applications are currently open, but you still have plenty of time to apply. Cs and scholarship applications close October the 8th. And then the main round for all applicants closes November 19th, 2021. December 16th to 20th is the time when you get to change your preferences. And, you know, we encourage you to apply widely. We hope that you will do that. Hopefully, you know, you apply to many courses, but at the time when it's a change of preferences, this is the time to decide which course or which program you think is really right for you. So sometimes this takes a while to work out. And then I should say that if we just go to the next slide, it's still possible to apply after these dates, but we may not have places. So our applications actually do stay open beyond November the 19th, but yeah, you need to get in as quickly as you can to be competitive. Okay, so these are the two offerings that we'll be talking about today with the VTAC codes. Okay, so in the next slide, I'm just going to talk a little bit about pathways, and we mentioned this in the session this morning, but I'll just go into a bit more detail. So in the BA Fine Art, we have, there are different ways to apply to our program. So we also have programs from some of our partnered RMIT VE programs. So a student may choose to do this before applying to the degree. And VE is a great option for those who are not ready to apply directly to higher education or have taken the VTAL option in high school. These are the current, so if we could just go back, sorry, I'll just talk a bit more about the pathways. So these are the current pathway options that we have in Fine Art program. So we have one from the Advanced Diploma of Visual Art. So on successful completion of this program, this gives you direct entry into our BA program, into any area, and allows you to complete the degree in 2 years. We also have some pathway programs from the Advanced Diploma of Screen and Media and the Advanced Diploma of Music Industry, but this is only for the video stream or the video studio. This also gives you direct entry with a reduced program plan, slightly different from the Advanced Diploma of Visual Arts. Okay, we can go to slide 9. Let's have a look at the selection process for the Fine Art program. So as I mentioned before, we have 7 areas in the BA Fine Art, and each has a slightly different focus on their folio requirements. Some areas also have a greater demand than others. So if you're unsuccessful in being offered a place for your first preference, you may be eligible for a place in your second preference. Now, it's very important to consider this. So in your selection task, which I'll talk about in a minute, you will be asked to put down 3 preferences in order. So this is to do with the area that you wish to focus on, your main area of study and the one that you are most competitive for in your application. So if you're not eligible or you're not competitive for your first preference, we may be able to offer you a second preference. Okay, so this is a selection task. This is what you have to do for your application. So you need to submit a couple of things. You need to submit a statement outlining what you expect to learn from the fine art degree. Now this could be general, or this could be specific to the studio area that you have an interest in. You need a description of a recent exhibition or art event that you have seen, and it can be online, but this demonstrates to us your interest in the culture of art as well as making it. So that's really important. As I said before, you select up to 3 studio majors, studio specialisations, same thing, in order of preference. So this is just in case you don't get your first preference. We'd also like to see an explanation of your reasons for your first studio preference. So this might be about why you're interested in that area. Maybe, you've had experience in that, or maybe you haven't, and it's something that you really want to learn about. Then most importantly, we need to see some images of a folio of work that addresses your studio major preference. And you can include links, websites, URLs, things like that. And then we ask you just to also include 1 additional image, sound or video work. So in a minute, I'll talk about what is included in these folio of images, but I'll get to that in a minute. So if your selection task is successful, one of 2 things can happen. You may receive a direct offer, or you may be invited to attend an interview for further selection process to see if you're competitive for a place. And obviously that interview will be online. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just start to talk about what do you include in a folio. So your folio can be a combination of images, video and sound work, and should demonstrate the following. We want to see creative potential, technical ability, capacity to think conceptually, and awareness of art history and or contemporary practice. So these things can be demonstrated in your statements, but also in your work. Select works for your pre-selection that indicate your artistic strengths. Remember that you are applying to a fine art course. We want to see a passion for experimentation, inventive responses to all the joys and frustrations that you may have experienced this year. So we're completely aware that certainly last year, but to an extent this year, that you may have not had full access to, the types of facilities that you would usually have. So we take this into consideration. Representative staff from all the areas you have selected will be looking at your folio. So this means it gets viewed by 3 separate staff members. I want to emphasise that the academic staff who look at your folios have had lots of experience and can recognise creative talent, even if you haven't had access to amazing facilities. So this is relevant in terms of what I mentioned before about maybe not having full access to your facilities at school, but it's also important to consider that if you're applying to an area where you may not have had a lot of experience, let's say you wanted to apply to gold and silversmithing, but you've never worked with metal before, even if you can demonstrate other ways in your folio that work with form and inventive ways of, working materials, we really value that, really want to see that. So last, I just want to emphasise that we understand that you may not have had access to professional materials and facilities, that some of your work may have been done at the kitchen table or on the bedroom floor this year. This is totally okay, and anything you can show us that you can be inventive with limited facilities is great. So now I'll take you through some more specific details of what to include in your folio for the different studio majors. Okay. So in drawing, you can include work that's not directly drawing, painted, assembled, collage, or install projects. You can include VCE project work. You can include independent work you made at home, sketchbook or journal pages, drawing from life observation, a family member, pet, or some objects in your home, architectures or views outside. We go to the next one. So in painting, It's good to show works that are made through observation, perhaps from your home or a view outside. You can include paintings in a variety of media. They might be oil, acrylic, water-based, and all are suitable to include. You may also include your own photography, video, collages, objects, craft-based or mixed media works. And you may include drawings in a variety of media such as pencil, charcoal, ink, markers, etc. So I think what we're trying to say is that all forms of experimentation with image making and materials is really good. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so print, you can include things like prints, digital images, drawing, collage, photography, mixed media, artist books, posters and zines. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. So gold and silversmithing, we'd like to see an interest in the miniature, small scale objects, so they may or may not be made out of metal. All types of material, non-precious materials are encouraged. Plastics, found objects, paper, organic materials, polymer clay, and also exploring wearability. You might want to include some photos about how these works and their relationship to the body, where they're situated, how big they are, things like that. Sketchbooks, collages showing explorations of form and shape. So we also want to see your kind of your thinking process as well. If we go to the next slide. Okay, in sculpture, we'd like to see experiments in any kind of three-dimensional works. So this could be ceramics, models, drawings. Materials don't have to be traditional art materials. They could be natural materials from your garden, food, domestic materials, paper mache, plaster bandage, recycled waste materials. So obviously in sculpture, you're really experimenting with materials. So we really encourage you to explore every possibility. Okay, the next one, ceramics. Obviously we'd like to see experiments with clay. They may or may not be fired. 3D objects, clay experience is not essential. We'd like to see an evidence of your making. So again, sketches and things like that. Exploration of different materials and obviously drawings. Okay, in video, we'd like to see any short film, experimental films, animations, animated GIFs, music videos, performance works, projections, photographic works, sound recordings, original music and digital images. Okay, tips and tricks. So it's all about documentation. This is the main way that you can communicate to us, what you're doing. So when you are documenting your work, just try to consider some things such as lighting. Natural lighting is always good. Perhaps don't take things in direct sunlight, but filtered sunlight is really good. Scale, we want to see, how big these works are. Sometimes documentation, it's very hard to do that. So maybe more than one photo of the same work can be useful with some kind of reference to scale. Details are really great. We really love to see the kind of materials and processes you're using, the kind of textures that might be evident in the work. And also time. Time's something that perhaps we don't consider. Does your work change over time? Maybe it's a series of works that documents how you built it up. Maybe it's something that's time-based and actually just needs video to, to document it well. So I think if we just go to the next slide. Yes, I think now we can actually pause for some questions before I hand over to Alan to talk about photography. So I can hear there's been lots of questions going on in the chat, but Julie, is there any particular questions that we can ask our panel?
Yep, at the moment a lot of the questions are around the submitting the selection task and the timelines.
Yep.
So I'm just having a look at which ones. So one of them was when I tried to apply and submit the selection task, they couldn't submit the selection task until November. Is this correct? They're a year 12 student. And I'm happy to help with answers, Martine, if you need
help. The question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have put an answer in a reply in the question, but if you want to expand on that.
Oh, could you just read out your question? Just for my
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not correct that you can't apply until that you can't submit your selection task until November. I'm not sure what was happening there, but yeah, you should be able to submit your selection task at any point after you've submitted your main application. There are 2 stages to the application. So there's the actual application itself, and then you'll be prompted to submit a selection task as a second stage, and you won't be eligible to be assessed until you've submitted that selection task. So you should be able to submit them. I have put some information in there for you if you're having issues submitting selection tasks. I've put a contact details of the teams that should be able to help you in the admissions teams. They can actually see your application and see the issues that you're having. So if you contact them, if it's a technical issue, they'll be much more able to help you than the school will be.
Thanks, Julie.
I've also put the links to the program pages in the chat. So that the program page has a header called admissions, and underneath that there's all the information about the selection tasks and the deadlines.
So while we're just looking at the next question, so just keep in mind that we've got a lot of staff here who are from the specialist areas. So if any of you have questions specifically about different studio areas, you know, you can talk to. We can get someone to you know, to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have got a question that follows on from that. In the previous live Q&A, it was said that you can specialise in 2 different fields, for example, drawing and painting. Would I need to mention the other specialisation when discussing why we choose our preferred major?
That's a good question. Usually, well, look, probably in the situation of drawing and painting, they do have a lot of synergies. So it's quite common for people to be working across both. Ultimately, you'll be offered a place in one or the other, and certainly in your, you know, in your first foundation semester, you will be anchored in one or the other. So it's probably best to talk about the one that's your priority at the moment. But it would be useful for us to hear that you have this interest in a kind of a, you know, incorporating them together in a hybrid practice, because, you know, we encourage that as well. Thanks,
another
Jill.
question. Sorry, another question is, should we annotate each artwork, and if so, how in depth should we go?
There is capacity in the selection task online form to actually include a little description with each one. I think it's a really good thing to do. It's great to just have a little bit of background, you know, even the title of the work, what your reflection about it, how it's made, things like that. So yes.
Okay, so are you looking for process images or sketches, or just final complete work?
I would say a bit of both. I mean, you only have 9 images, but we don't necessarily want to see pages out of your, you know, the VCE process. I can't remember what they're called. Those process books. We definitely want to see drawings. We want to get an idea of like your research interests and things like that. But look, it might be if that question has a specific area of, say, that's painting or print, we could get a staff member to talk to that if you want.
I think at the moment there isn't a follow-on comment from that particular one, but there are quite a lot of questions coming in around different areas. So another one that links to the selection task. So would you recommend a balance of work with unique ideas and technically advanced work? Is one question.
Yep, no, I think a balance is good. We don't want to see necessarily all finished works. You know, I mean, experiments are really good to see as well. You know, things that experiments that just show kind of process and look, basically we just want to see, you know, a passion for experimentation and invention and creativity.
Yeah. Somebody's seeking clarification on whether they use their VCE folios for the selection, or if they they just select works, trials that are in relation to the specialisations I want to get into?
Look, basically, you should submit your strongest work. And so whether you think that's from your VCE folio or whether it's work that you've been doing outside of that, that realm, it doesn't really matter. And we do have a lot of people applying who aren't from VCE, so they would have a different folio again. I think you just have to work out what your strongest work is. And look, if people have questions about folio, you're also always welcome to you know, to contact us outside of this forum as well for, you know, for feedback.
There's a question here that might be more might apply to Greg for the drawing studio. In terms of submitting an application for drawing, if I draw digitally as well as using traditional medias, would this be accepted as part of my application, or would one medium be preferred? Would this affect my application?
Absolutely not affect your application in any way. By all means, include both. It's really good to see the nature of your thinking sort of in dialogue between those two modes of drawing.
Okay, thanks, Greg. There's quite a few questions around the format of the selection task and how many images people need to submit. Would you like to expand on that? And I'll also just recommend again going to the admissions information on the program page, which I've posted into the chat. That gives all the details of the selection task criteria. Yeah, so the selection task format is it's quite structured. It gives you the option to do written feedback but also images. So you're asked to submit up to 9 images. I think it's possibly 10 with the last one on the end. Those 9 images can just be, you know, they can be JPEGs, they can be, you know, all sorts of different digital files, but they do have the capacity to have links embedded in them. So if you feel like, you know, you want to include links as well, either to your website or to YouTube clips or something like that, you can do that. So the written part is quite specific. You'll be prompted with questions, and like I said before, some of it is about why you want to study in the program and your specialisation. Some of it is about your interest. We'll be asking you about what exhibitions you've seen. That's really important for us because we really want to know that you're engaged, you know, in learning about art through visiting exhibitions and experiencing events and things like that, as well as just learning about it at school. I think that's all I can say, Julie. Okay. Yep. There's another one again about the format of the selection tasks. In terms of submitting, hang on, sorry, I've already done that one. It seems to be a bit of a confusion around answering the questions from the selection task as relates to the images or any web page links that applicants might supply. Are you able to just clarify the format of the submission? And I can help with that if you need. Yeah, I think if I understand the question, so you'll be prompted for, like I said before, you'll be prompted with questions when you do the, you know, when you get into the form. I've actually never seen it from the side of an applicant, so I can't say exactly what it looks like. Yeah, so you'll be prompted with questions. They'll be quite self-evident, like I said before. Why do you want to study? Your interests, what exhibitions you've been to. Then when you submit the images, you also have the capacity to include an explanation with that as well. And it's really good if you can do that. It's so much better when there's a little bit of a context and background for each image that's been submitted. But Julie, if you've got anything to add to that. Yeah, no, I mean, the way that it's formatted is, yes, you have prompts to questions where you put the text and then areas where you can upload links and so on. So it's quite, once you're actually in there, it's quite clear what you need to do. And it does give you instructions on file format and file size and so on. So once you're in there, hopefully it'll be a bit clearer once you're in the process of applying, but you can always contact us if you are still unclear, and I'll put contact details for us at the end of the session. I've actually got a question here about applying for ceramics. Just a quick thing before we go to ceramics. Do you know, Julie, that is it possible to download a PDF of the selection? You know, sometimes you can do that with application forms and you can get like a preview of it so you know what to expect. I'm not actually sure, because I'm not sure if you see all of the questions in one go or whether you have to answer one question before you can go on to the next one.
Yeah.
Again, I'm the same as you. I don't see the actual format of the application itself. I have put in some contact details for direct admissions and for the DSC selection team, which is the college selection team, who can actually see your application. So if you've got any questions around technical issues or the formatting of your application in that kind of detail, the contact emails and phone numbers are in the chat just a little bit earlier.
Thanks.
Okay. We've got a question here. I'm applying for ceramics. This may be for Chris. Would it be worth putting work from other fields in, for example, environmental or communications design?
Are you here, Chris? Oh, good.
Yeah. Hi. So I've lost my chat again, but yes, we put your ceramics in, what you've done, but we also want to look at exactly what Martine's been talking about. We want to look at what you've been doing, what you've kind of been making, and it doesn't matter if it's in different materials, and also like drawing, things like that.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Another question. If I create artwork using art markers like Copic markers, does it fall into drawing, or is drawing more using pencils, etc.? So I guess maybe a bit of clarity around the types of mediums and techniques that drawing includes.
I can answer that, Julie. It's Greg here from the Drawing Studio. We're interested in the way that you use different mediums. So one sort of image drawn in Copic markers can be quite different to one done in pencil. So obviously it shows an interest in your part if you're using particular types of mediums. So by all means, include a few different mediums if you can. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Greg. We've got a question here that sort of touches on the advanced diploma. So again, you might want to clarifying around pathways. If you have a lot of experience in art from school but have not got the ATAR required, can you go straight into the advanced diploma as opposed to the diploma as a pathway to the degree? I might possibly need to answer that one. This session is actually about the bachelor's, so we're not actually able to advise around the vocational education courses that are available. As far as I understand, ATAR is not a requirement for getting into the bachelor's. Is that correct, Martine? She's nodding.
I'm pretty certain, yep.
Yeah, so I don't think ATAR is a requirement for getting into the bachelor's program. It's based on your English qualification and that you have passed the Year 12 qualification, and then your selection task and folio submission. So, but with regards to the diploma and the advanced diploma, as far as I understand, you have to go into the diploma first to get into the advanced diploma. They don't advertise the advanced diploma as a direct entry. So I probably suggest that you follow up with a vocational education school around that topic. It's not part of our school, I'm afraid, even though it's an art program. It's part of the vocational education college program. Okay, so got another question. In the favourite exhibit question, do you need to highlight your academic knowledge of the artist, or just why it attracts you and how it makes you feel?
Well, sometimes responses are a combination of those things. So we just want to get a sense that you're actually, that you're interested and passionate about all aspects of art, not just making it, but researching it. We want to know the kind of artists that, that really kind of influence you. So yes, it would be slightly, maybe some aspect of academic reference in that, you actually know a little bit about them, but obviously we want to know why you're interested in that artist, what it is about them that, if it is of interest. Thanks, Julie.
Okay, thank you, Martine. Under what criteria would you gain direct admission? I guess the pathway is going to be the only
I think
way.
That's the only way. Yes, direct admission is through a pathway. That's right. Otherwise, you have to apply.
And there's a question around the English requirements. Do you need 30 for English, or what's the English requirements?
Yeah, now I think it was in the slide. Okay.
Again, the qualifications such as the English qualification are actually specified on that program page that I've been sharing in the chat.
Yeah. Look, I think it's just a pass. I think it's just a pass in English. I don't think we have like a high, benchmark for it.
I'll get the details and post it in the chat specifically.
Thanks.
There was a question for sculpture, which I think Fleur has responded to, but if you wanted to expand on that, Fleur, I think it was around the mediums and the materials that you get to use in the sculpture. Is there a limitation to materials and sculpture as a focus of certain materials and techniques?
Thank you. No, there isn't really. I wasn't sure if that question was also about the folio, so I'll sort of answer it in relation to both. So we're interested in seeing all sorts of different materials in the folio, depending on what you have access to. And in the studio, we teach some of the traditional materials. So we have a course in bronze foundry, and we have metal and wood workshops. But we also, students use a really wide range of materials, and we encourage experimentation with them. And, sculpture's constantly changing, and I think there's so many different techniques and different materials that we can use, and we try to work with as many different things as we can. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thanks, Fleur. Somebody's asked, can you include animation as part of your folio? What speciality would this fall into? And then Martine, I guess this is a question for you around video and...
Yeah, so apart from being the program manager of BA Fine Art, I also teach into the video area. So yes, you can definitely submit animation, and while it might obviously fall into an application to video, you could also include animation for other studios as well. So I think students who've applied to painting have included animation, possibly to print, things like that.
Thanks,
yeah,
Martine.
absolutely.
Thank you. Somebody has actually asked, can I enter without finishing year 12? More specifically, would I be able to enter through a certificate?
Do you want to answer that, Julie, or shall I?
Well, the requirements are that you must have successfully completed an Australian year 12 or the equivalent senior secondary school qualification. That is a minimum academic requirement to get into the program.
Yeah. And I think if you haven't, then you need to go through the VE process.
Yeah, so you can look at the pathways, which again are listed on the website with a bit more information. Do you have any examples of folios we can reference from accepted students, or is there anything we can reference in terms of an example folio?
We actually don't have example folios. It's not really something, it's not something we've done in the past. Some of the images that I showed you in the presentation, some of them were examples of, first year work, those kind of early experiments. So, no, sorry, we don't have any examples.
There is a brief couple of videos on the program page that talk you through the sort of folio process and how you can present a folio and what's kind of looked at. It is general. It covers other programs as well as fine art and photography, but it might give you a bit of a feel of what the actual event is like and what happens on the event. I guess a question some people might be asking is, are they going to be interviewed or can they get into the program? Is an interview a requirement to get into the program?
As I said before, when you submit your selection task, two things can happen. You can actually be given a direct offer, so directly without an interview, or you may be invited for an interview if there's something else that we just wanted to clarify a little bit more about your folio and whether you're competitive. So yes, you can. Interviews sometimes happen, but not always. And certainly at the moment, it's more difficult. It's a little bit more difficult to have the amount of interviews that we're used to. So we'll be having those interviews online. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Somebody's asking about job opportunities, internships. I guess, again, this comes back to the will aspects of the program.
Yep, so it's something that I spoke probably a bit more about in this morning's session. We do have an internship program. Some of those internships are already partners of the school, but then students can also instigate their own partners. It's really, it's a fantastic thing to do. It's really important. So that's one of the ways you get industry experience. We also have other projects that come through the courses where you're actually gaining industry experience as well. So, for example, in photography, they work with Collingwood Yards, and in the past we've worked with different areas like testing grounds and Heidi, and all sorts of partnerships. Thanks, Julie.
Okay, thank you. How are we doing for time? Have we got time for any more questions? Or
well, I reckon we probably should let Alan talk a bit
ready
about
to move on to Alan and photography.
Yeah, and then if we've got time at the end, maybe we can revisit some of the unanswered questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, hi, thanks everyone, and thanks Martine for that great session on fine art. My name's Alan and I'm the Program Manager of the Bachelor of Arts Photography. And I'm joined today by my colleagues, Dr. Rebecca Najowski, Dr. Kelly Hussey-Smith and Bronick Koska, who are in the chat answering questions about the photography program and the selection task in particular. Many of you might have come to the earlier session, and I hope you did. If not, that session is available where we talked a lot more detail about the program. You can watch that back if you missed it. And as we've heard, this session is really specifically about the selection task. But just very briefly about the program, the School of Art is made up of two disciplines, the fine art discipline and the photography discipline. So it's an entirely separate bachelor's degree that we have in photography. There's some movement between those two programs, but it's a separate qualification. So we've heard about the 7 areas in fine art, and we have a separate program. We have our own, we don't have 7 different approaches to the selection task though. It's just one selection task into the program. And we have, although we have a very diverse range of photographic practices, we take everyone through a simple one single selection process, if you like. So we can move quickly onto the pathways. So if you don't gain entry into the bachelor directly, you can come through the RMIT certificate and diploma in photography and photo imaging. And if you do that diploma, 2-year diploma, you can come into 2nd year. So that's the pathway on the left. It's also possible to enter and get, gain guaranteed entry into the photography program through the diploma of and advanced diploma of visual arts. But that's a 5-year pathway. So those are the 2 formal pathways, but there are other ways if you've done other study that you might be able to get recognition for that study, contributing to your degree. So next slide, just again to briefly speak about photography. We've been teaching photography, or not we, but photography has been taught at RMIT since 1887. It's one of the oldest photography programs in the world, and one of the most highly regarded, has been for a long time in Australia, and still the leader in photographic education in Australia, and by far the largest. So our scale means that we can teach across the full spectrum of photographic practices. And the way we structure that is the three academic staff that are here today are talking about what we call art-centered photography, client-centered photography, and world-centered photography. So these different approaches. And of course, we're housed within the School of Art, which is, as you see there, #1 in Asia Pacific and #11 in the world. The next slide just gives us a kind of quick overview of our approach, or some insights into how we approach photography and photographic education. It's comprehensively integrated the technical skills, the practical, along with theoretical, conceptual, and that's our breadth and that's our strength. On the next slide, this is just a little bit further, I guess, to outline our position in that photography is not just an expressive medium for artists, although certainly we have people exploring that and staff in that field, but we also are interested in photography elsewhere and how it operates in industry, in commercial applications, in journalistic and documentary applications, and in other technological and cultural spaces as well. So moving on to the selection task, however, which, as we said, the focus of this session, it's relatively straightforward. We've just got 2 questions that we're interested in hearing from you about, so that we can get a response and get a sense of why you're applying and what you hope to achieve. So the first one is exactly that. What interests you about photography as a form of visual communication? And so there you can talk about the way you've entered it or why you've been drawn to that. So that's a kind of to think about it as visual communication. The second question is about any relevant experience that you have, but also we recognize that many students may not have any particular experience other than doing it as a hobby or doing it at school, but that if you don't have particular experience there, you can answer that question in terms of what you'd like to achieve with photography. So where do you see photography taking you, and where would you like to go with it? The third part of the pre-selection task is a series of 8 images, and then a short text explaining the concept of that work that you've submitted. And this is the most common question that we get around those images and what images to submit. And we saw, I guess, similar questions coming out in fine art. The thing for us that we're really looking for is to get a sense of a photographic exploration. So that's why we've put there that we would prefer to see a specific theme or concept explored across those 8 images. And then the statement then lets you talk again specifically about that concept or what it was that you were thinking about and working through with that work. So that just gives us a better sense, rather than trying to do 8 different images covering all sorts of applications, but to try and show some depth, I guess, into a particular exploration. Now, that might be something you've done in school, but it doesn't have to be at all. It can be a project, a self-directed project that you've done, or in any forum where it's been produced. But yeah, just something that sort of gives us a sense of what you've done and how you're thinking about and how you're practicing and how you're able to explore ideas photographically. So that's the task in a nutshell. The things, we have a sort of a criteria that we're looking for, and that is that around the creative potential that we can see through the work. And I think Martine said it earlier, and I really agree that, we understand that people are coming, from school, or you're early in your careers, but you're looking to explore that. So it's not necessarily about some kind of professional standard, but we're skilled and practiced at seeing the creative potential in what you've made so far. Technical ability, just that you've got some craft behind that, and then the ability to think conceptually are the 3 criteria that we're looking for in that task. So yeah, that's basically the kind of rough outline of what we're looking for. As I said, the number 1 question we get around is those 8 images and what to put in, and the number 1 piece of advice I can give you is to train those 8 images onto a specific subject and show us a depth of exploration is the thing that we're looking for. It's not so much the content or the theme or the genre that it's in, but that we're looking for you to have applied yourself in a specific space. So with that, I'm happy to start fielding questions.
Thanks, Alan.
And we can include the other staff that are here as well if necessary. But yeah, are there any questions coming up?
Yeah, we have some for you, Alan.
Great.
Does the course offer any scholarship opportunities, and if so, how would one go about applying for these? I have put a link to the to the scholarships webpage in the chat.
Okay, thanks. Yes, look, there aren't specific scholarships for the photography program at undergraduate level. There's actually a new one. I think it's just started for the master's program, but at undergraduate there aren't specific scholarships for our program. But the RMIT scholarships office, which I'm sure you've linked to, has a whole lot of more general scholarships that students can apply for. We do have some other philanthropic support, which I actually meant to mention in the earlier session and forgot. So we do have some philanthropic awards and an annual exhibition and awards that come out of philanthropic support, but no, there are no specific scholarships for the Bachelor of Arts Photography.
Thank you, Alan. How does the photography course differ from other universities? What are the benefits from doing this particular course? And
Sure.
Are there any opportunities for internships and job opportunities?
Yeah, great. My favorite question, actually. So I think the key difference for us is that it's as I was outlining at the beginning, roughly, it's a separate degree in photography. So we're not nested within a design department where you take a major in photography. We're not a major of, as you saw, we're not a major of the fine art program at RMIT. We're a distinct program, and following our program, we have our own honours program, we have our own master's program. So we're a distinct entity in the university known as a discipline. And so we have a team now, I think, of about 11 or 12 full-time academic staff and another double that number of visiting specialist sessional staff. So our strength, our difference is that we cover the full gamut of photographic applications. So it's from art photography, documentary, journalism, through the whole gamut of commercial and client-centered photographic practices, if it's food or architecture, the full spectrum. So and now we also have staff that are, as I said in the earlier session, really thinking through what else photography opens up, socially. So we're talking about post photography and where this starts to intersect with machine learning and all these other kind of technologies that are all based on photography. So that's our strength, is that the range of skills, the range of staff that can really give you a specifically photographic education. And of course, then you have added to that the benefit of being inside a kind of really interesting, innovative leading institution like RMIT. So you can then have opportunities to study elsewhere in fine art, to study in media and communications, in design, or anywhere else inside the university. So yeah, I think that mainly answers it. Was there a second part to the question that I missed?
I guess in industry engagement might be worth talking
Sure.
about, and job opportunities, internships.
Yeah, I think that I did talk a little bit about the industry engagement in the earlier session as well. We certainly do a lot of it in all areas, and I said it covers all scales, from little one-off opportunities for something that's happening for a few days right through to projects that go for years and years. I think RMIT has a really distinctive approach, what we call the studio model. So our pedagogy, our learning environment through the 24 credit point studios, which are about praxis and integrating theory and practice, do give employment benefits. They do create really well-rounded graduates who are specialists in an area, but can also move between areas and into other creative fields. So I think we have a good mix, and I've worked elsewhere, but I think there's a particular mix at RMIT where we have, like I said, these industry partnerships, but also that's really well integrated into our pedagogy and into our classrooms for people who want to have creative careers.
Thanks, Alan. We have got some more questions. I might just mention that if anyone did miss the earlier session, it will be uploaded to the Open Day website, so you would be able to listen to that if you did miss it. There's a couple of questions around the folio. So is there something in particular that you're looking for in an exceptional folio?
Yeah, like I said, it's not in terms of like genre or content, but about that depth of engagement. So something that's, I think the first question there is about visual communication. So, your work will be viewed by several academic staff, and we are, always excited to see new work. So anything that you can engage us with across 8 images is going to get our attention and going to be highly regarded. So yeah, that's hard to sort of pinpoint exactly, but it's about communication, so the subject matter is not important to us. It's about, because we work with a whole range of students in a whole range of different areas. So we're happy to move between all those areas in our appreciation of visual work, but it's about getting something that, you know, brings across a concept or an idea, or, you know, the sense of a kind of exploration or a discovery in that work. So yeah, I think talk to anyone you have around you. So talk to your art teachers if you're at school, or talk to, you know, but basically you're looking to engage your audience. That's, I think, the key.
Thanks, Helen. There's a specific question about the formatting of the selection task and folio. How many images can we put on one page? Is it specifically 8 images altogether, or 8 pages with as many images?
It's 8 images is the idea. So, and we'd be very, very grateful if those 8 images came as a single PDF. That's the instruction every year, but we still get a mix of individual images. 8 images is, you know, obviously it's an arbitrary number, but it's enough to give us a sense that you've gone into it. So rather than jamming 3 images on all the 8 pages, I would suggest taking those 24 images and, like I said, talking to anyone you have around you who has some expertise or some experience in this area, and bring it down to those 8 strongest images that will, you know, give us that insight into the work that you're making.
Thanks, Alan. Another question is more about once graduating. So once graduating, what jobs do most students go into, and what are these jobs seen as?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I mean, photography is a rapidly changing and vastly changed field from where it was, you know, a couple of decades ago. So we have always had a pathway into commercial photography. This has been RMIT's had a long reputation for graduating commercial students who would typically go into working for assisting for photographers. They might even start that while they're studying, work into assisting, and then work their way through those kinds of career paths. Those still exist, so we still have students taking that kind of path, but there's a whole lot of other paths as well. Like I said, we have our own honours program where you can get a 4th year to really kind of put a capstone on your capstone of your study, if you like. We have other people working into, you know, as artists who are going out and, you know, having a career as a photographic artist. We have other people who you know, looking at all sorts of other kinds of cultural production, who can look at into, you know, even fields in editorial fields like picture editing, working in institutions with images, working, yeah, there's a whole range of things. And yeah, it's changing fast, but you know, we think that we're giving the skills to have a long career. So we're not trying to change, we're not trying to give you just like job ready skills for the jobs today, because we really understand how much this field is changing, and that we're looking at that long, deep engagement with this as a career that you can you would likely move through various different phases in a photographic career going forward from this point. Could
I just add something to that, Alan, because I think it's a really good point, and it's probably just a good reminder that, you know, a career in the arts, in the creative industries, isn't always, I mean, finding an employer, that's that's a big part of it, but so many people who work in the creative industries are actually creating their own jobs, their own careers, but they're the ones who are actually starting up things that we don't even know about yet. So you know, there is an entrepreneurial sort of aspect to it as well. Yeah,
that's a great point. Thanks, Martine. Thoroughly agree that, yeah, people setting up their own businesses are, you know, from the get-go, for sure. And it is, yeah, photography is largely self-employed. You know, if you want to work as a photographer, then most photographers are self-employed. There are people who are employed by organizations and institutions as photographers, but many are also self-employed. And we're really interested in, in seeing our program and our programs as a community, and supporting students into those early careers post-university, staying connected with people and creating forums for you to stay connected with each other. And also cross-disciplinary experiences while you're in our program, so that we want to have you working with people in the art program, design programs, media programs, because those people will be working with you throughout your career. So we're also focused on trying to provide those opportunities to meet people in other related disciplines, because they become important as well.
Thanks, Alan. I think we're opening it up for questions around both programs now, unless anyone has any more questions specifically for photography that they want to point out from your team. If anybody in your team wants to answer some questions they've posted.
I was just going to point out, I saw there seemed to be a couple of questions about technical issues with the pre-selection kit. So I don't know if they've been able to be answered, but I guess I would just say, please stay in touch and make sure that you get the support you need to get the right pre-selection kits in. One of the things that makes me anxious every year is that we have a lot of people listing the program in their VTAC application and then not submitting a pre-selection kit. And I always wonder if that was an accident or if that was deliberate. So, you can submit multiple selection kits for multiple different programs. You can apply for fine art and photography and design and what have you, and they'll all have their own kit. But if you don't get one in, we can't assess it and we can't give you a place. So I apologise if there are system blockages, but please persist with that and make sure that you get those kits in.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I have posted the contact details for the DSC selection team and the direct admissions team. Their details are listed in the chat above. So if anybody is having submission issues, their contact details are in the chat. I'll repost them in now, but they should be able to help you with any technical issues you're having. And yeah, just to remember that when you do apply, you do need to do that second stage of submitting your selection task, or you won't be eligible. So that's important to remember.
Yeah, indeed.
I've just posted the English prerequisites in the chat for both programs. And I'm just going to post in the information that's from the program page about the selection tasks and their deadlines. There are various deadlines, so it depends which round you're trying to get into, basically, and whether you're a Year 12 student or whether you're not. Yeah. So please refer to the program pages, because that's got most of the information in it that you'll need.
Yeah, and I think maybe we're nearly out of time, I think, but I guess the other thing I would say is, like, get in touch, if you've got questions around the technical issues with that part, but also if you need to speak to the academic staff or the admin staff about the programs that you're interested in. We're doing our best with Teams and doing an online open day, but if you have questions, if you want to get in touch, please do. And we hope there'll be other opportunities maybe to get on campus or to have more opportunities to learn about our programs before the end of the year. But if not, track us down. Our details are online, and get in touch.
I will also put in the end of this chat the contact phone numbers. Well, I'll put a link to our contact page, which includes the phone numbers for the undergraduate school admin. So we can answer questions around the selection task, or we can put you in touch with your relevant academic if you want to get in touch with any of the academics directly. So please do contact us if you need help.
And I think 19 November is the key date for the main part.
That's the main VTAC January, the first offer, main offer that will go out.
That's the key date, is 19 November. Yeah.
For non-year 12s through VTAC, the main deadline is the 30th of September.
Yeah.
Julie, can I just maybe mention that we do have a school Instagram account, which is also a really great way of, if people just are interested in seeing what's going on, in both disciplines, photography and fine art, they'll get sent reminders and updates and all sorts of things about that.
Yeah, so check the school's social media for updates about everything, including upcoming grad shows and so on.
Great. All right. Well, I think we're out of time. So
I think we are out of time. Thanks everyone for coming. I hope we see you at our grad show or at some other event that we have.
Thanks.